Srivasare Gaurabhaktivinoda Ki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Gaurang Ki, Shri Vrindavanam Ki, Shri Madhavam Ki, Shri Jagannath Gauri Darshan Ki. It's all Gaura Pranati, Gaura Simbalis, Gaura Simbalis, Gaura Simbalis, Gaura Shiva, and Gaura Shiva Prabhupada. So reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, we're up to Hari Lila chapter number 17, pastimes of the Lord in his youth, and we'll read from text number 66, which is on the board, on the white, on the screen, should I say. We'll go to text number 68. Okay, Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we'll go text number 66, which is on the screen. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. Tahate Acharya Badahoya Dukha Mati. Acharya Gosanere Prabhu Kari Guru Bhakti. It's interesting in the book. It says Acharya Goshanere, and on there it says Goshashere. Better check these edits, Krishna Rupa. I think I pulled that one off. Well, I think that's from the 1972 edition, I think, where I got it offline from. So, yeah, that's why I was kind of wondering why they're saying it differently, but no, it's different on the board. Anyway, we'll do the word for word. Acharya Gosha Shere unto Advaita Acharya Prabhu, the Lord, Kare does Guru Bhakti, offering respects like a spiritual master.
Tahate, in that way. Acharya, Advaita Acharya. Bada, very much. Hoya, becomes. Dukhamati, aggrieved. Translation. Lord Caitanya respected Advaita Acharya as his spiritual master, but Advaita Acharya Prabhu was greatly aggrieved by such behaviour. Translation's the same. So text number 67. Bangikari Jnana Marga Karila Vyakana Koda Vashi Prabhutare Koila Avagyana. Translation. Thus he whimsically began to explain the path of philosophical speculation, and the Lord in his anger seemingly disrespected him. Text number 68. Tabe Acharya Gosanera Ananda Hoya Ila Lajata Hi Iya Prabhu Prasada Karila. Translation. At that time, Advaita Acharya was greatly pleased. The Lord understood this, and he was somewhat ashamed, but he offered Advaita Acharya his benediction. Purport. Advaita Acharya was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri's spiritual master. Therefore, Ishvara Puri was the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was Advaita Acharya's godbrother. As such, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu treated Advaita Acharya as his spiritual master, but Sri Advaita Acharya did not like this behaviour of Lord Chaitanya, for he wanted to be treated as his eternal servant. Advaita Prabhu's aspiration was to be a servant of the Lord, not his spiritual master. He therefore devised a plan to antagonize the Lord. He began to explain the path of philosophical speculation in the midst of some unfortunate Mayavadis. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard about this, he immediately went there in a very angry mood and began to beat Advaita Acharya. At that time, Advaita Acharya, greatly pleased, began to dance, saying, "Just see how my desire has now been fulfilled. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to treat me honourably for so long, but now he's treating me neglectfully. This is my reward. His affection for me is so great that he wanted to save me from the hands of the Mayavadis." Hearing the statement, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was somewhat ashamed, but he was very much pleased with Advaita Acharya. Aye. Homajnana Chamanandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Amnitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, I want to go to the next slide. Just bear with me. There we are. So, reading the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, this is the pastimes of the Lord in his youth, and this section that we're heading into now is going over 16 different pastimes that the Lord performed when he was in his youth, before he took sannyas. And the Caitanya Bhagavat elaborates further on some of these, on the pastimes, which aren't necessarily elaborated on by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, as we discussed before. That's the respect and courtesy that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami as a Vaishnava author is showing, that you don't necessarily repeat what previous acharyas have written out of respect for them. If an acharya has written on a certain subject matter in depth, then generally it's not commented on. So it's discussed here, but not in any great detail. So we will read from the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das Thakur about this pastime, because it's quite a meaningful, deep pastime actually, with a lot of teachings in there by Lord Chaitanya. But it's good also to understand who Advaita Acharya is before we discuss these pastimes, because you may hear them without the proper understanding of who these personalities are, and just see it in a mundane light, and may not appreciate that these are purely transcendental activities and pastimes performed on the spiritual platform with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his eternal associates. So the Panchatattva, who we can see in the image here, means the five truths, for those who aren't familiar with who the Panchatattva are. So in the middle we have Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, to his right is Nityananda Prabhu, and to Lord Nityananda's right is Advaita Acharya, and to the left of Caitanya Mahaprabhu is Gadadhar Pandit, and to his left is Srivas. So this is the Panchatattva, or the five truths. So when the Lord came as Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he was showing to the impersonalists. An impersonalist or a Mayavadi is someone who doesn't accept that the supreme absolute truth has a form, as a person. So to show these Mayavadis that's incorrect, he came in 5 different features, 5 different forms. So he came as Ishvara Tattva, the Supreme Lord himself, and it's explained that Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different from Lord Krishna. There is no difference between them. They are the Purna Bhagavan. And he has his expansion, Nityananda, his incarnation, who is Advaita Acharya, his energy, Gadadhar Pandit, and his devotee. So these are the 5 truths that Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu was manifesting when he appeared 500 years ago. And it was with these 5 associates, the 5 truths, that he began this Sankirtan movement to spread the holy names of Lord Krishna through this Kali Yuga, the Yuga Dharma, or the process of self-realization. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam it says the famous verse, Krishna Vanam Tvasha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Prasadam Yagnai Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Hi Sume Sudaha. And Prabhupada comments that in the age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of the Sankirtan Yajna. And Prabhupada further elaborates that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is always accompanied by his plenary expansion, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, his incarnation, Sri Advaita Prabhu, his internal potency, Sri Gadadhar Prabhu, and his marginal potency, Srivas Prabhu. He's in the midst of them as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is always accompanied by these other tattvas. Therefore, our obeisances to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu are complete when we say Sri Krishna Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. As preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, we first offer our obeisances to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting this Panchatattva mantra. Then we say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are 10 offences in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but these are not considered in the chanting of the Panchatattva mantra, namely Sri Krishna Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is known as Mahavadanyaya, the most magnanimous incarnation, for he does not consider the offences of the fallen souls. Thus, to deliver the full benefit of chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we must first take shelter of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, learn the Panchatattva Maha Mantra, and then chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That will be very effective. So sometimes, generally devotees, when we're doing our japa, we start with the Panchatattva mantra, and then we proceed on with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Most of you do that. That's how I was always shown how to chant the holy names on japa beads. So there's no offences when we're chanting the Panchatattva. So this is the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, that there are no offences made by chanting this Panchatattva mantra. So there's a nice purport also by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, who elaborates to deepen our understanding of the Panchatattva. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur describes the Panchatattva as follows: the supreme energetic, the personality of Godhead, manifesting in order to enjoy 5 kinds of pastimes, appears as members of the Panchatattva. Actually, there is no difference between them because they are situated on the absolute platform, but they manifest different spiritual varieties as a challenge to the impersonalists to taste different kinds of spiritual humours or rasas. In the Vedas it is said, Parasya Shaktir Vivhi Daiva Suryate. The varieties of energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are differently known. From this statement of the Vedas, one can understand that there are eternal varieties of humours or tastes in the spiritual world. Sri Gauranga, Sri Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Sri Gadadhar and Sri Vastakor are all on the same platform, but in spiritually distinguishing between them, one should understand that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the form of a devotee. Nityananda Prabhu appears in the form of a devotee spiritual master. Advaita Prabhu is the form of a bhakta, devotee incarnation. Gadadhar Prabhu is the energy of a bhakta, and Srivastakor is a pure devotee. Thus there are spiritual distinctions between them. The Bhakta Rupa, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhakta Sarup, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and the Bhakta Avatar, Sri Advaita Prabhu, are described as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, his immediate manifestation and his plenary expansion, and they all belong to the Vishnu category. Although the spiritual and marginal energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, they are predominated subjects, whereas Lord Vishnu is a predominator. As such, although they are on the same platform, they have appeared differently in order to facilitate tasting of transcendental mellows. Actually, however, there is no possibility of one being different from the other, for the worshipper and the worshipable cannot be separated at any stage. On the absolute platform, one cannot be understood without the other. Yeah, so they're all transcendental personalities on the transcendental platform, the absolute platform. So as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is pointing out, that they're all non-different because they're absolute, but at the same time, they're all individual personalities who are representing different features of the Lord as his servant, as his energy, and as Krishna himself, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the pastime we're going to read from the Chaitanya Bhagavat is the Lord enjoying these rasas or mellows that are mentioned here, all the different tastes that are experienced on the spiritual platform. So in the Mayavad conception, the impersonal conception, these mellows or rasas, they don't exist. Whereas to the Vaishnavas, this is the essence of the spiritual life, is being able to realize and taste these mellows, or these rasas, they're called. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we know, is the most magnanimous incarnation, because he's freely distributing the topmost rasa to everybody. So everybody can experience this conjugal ras that Krishna experiences with his most intimate associates, the gopis of Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming to share that taste, to experience it himself, but also to share that with everybody. All the living entities can experience this mellow. So no other incarnation has ever done that before. So it's quite unique that we're very lucky that we have Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is so merciful in this age of Kali Yuga. Because we can see that with different religious traditions, not being critical but an observation, I met some people, I think I was saying to you, Tom, the other day, I met some people from another faith who knock on doors around the area sometimes, and I was asking them, well, can you please explain your concept of God? What does God look like? What's his form? And they weren't able to do that. They gave some vague explanation about God is like a diamond, and shines different lights according to how you see the diamond. And I said, well, in other words, you don't really have a personal concept of God. And it's the same with most other faiths, like the Abrahamic religions. There is no detailed knowledge about God. They understand God's features, that God is great and God is all omniscient, and they have some of these features, but they don't understand the personality who has these features. Whereas we find in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it's very, very clear that Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the possessor of all of these attributes and qualities that are attributed to God. And Prabhupada actually says in I think it's in the introductional preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the concept of God and the concept of the absolute truth are not the same thing, because the concept of God implies there being a controller, whereas the absolute truth aims at the summum bonum, or the ultimate source from which everything emanates from. So people have a concept of God, there being a creator and a controller, whereas the Vaishnava tradition is understanding the summum bonum, the absolute truth, the ultimate source from which everything emanates from, who we understand is Krishna. And we can see that without having the mercy of a Vaishnava or coming in contact with a devotee of the Lord, generally that's as far as people will get with their God realization. It will be an impersonal understanding of God. And it's very, very prominent and profuse these days that people expound Mayavad philosophy, that God is just an energy and he's turned into these fractal parts which manifest in the human platform, but when we become self-realized, we will understand that we're all part of this one energy. In other words, we're all God. God is broken up into various fractal parts, and when we become self-realized, we realize actually we're God. Whereas this is Mayavad philosophy, and it's very, very contaminating. When one is contaminated with this Mayavad impersonal conception of spirituality, it's very, very hard to break free from that conditioning. Whereas we understand the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and also in the Bhagavad Gita, it's very clear. Krishna says, "Never was a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be." So he's making it very clear that I'm an individual person, and you are also an individual person eternally. But we understand there's a difference in quality, quantity and quality. So the analogy Prabhupada gives is like the fire, that the fire burns and can produce sparks, and the sparks burn with the same intensity and light as the fire, but you can't say the spark is as good as the fire. There's a difference between them. There's a distinction between the two things. Whereas the Mayavadis will say, no, the spark and the fire are just the same thing, there is no difference. Whereas in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we do make a difference. We understand Krishna is the supreme absolute truth from which everything emanates from, and we're one of his marginal energies, the Jiva Shakti, Tatastha Shakti. And the Tatastha Shakti can become covered over either by the Yogamaya potency, the spiritual potency, or the Mahamaya potency. So that's the position of the Jiva, is that the Jiva will become conditioned or covered over by this Mahamaya potency. And under Maya, we identify the self with the body. We think the body and the mind is who we are. So it says, Savo pari vinebhuktam tat parita nemralam hrishikesha hrishikena sevanam bhakta uchate, that by engaging in devotional service, one becomes free from all these upadis, all these false designations that I'm a man, I'm a female, I'm an Australian, I'm an American, I'm an Indian, whatever it may be. Everyone is conditioned by misidentifying the self as the body and the mind. So self-realization is to transcend that illusion, that misconception, and actually understand what our sarup is, what our actual form is in the spiritual world. And when we are realized what our sarup is, and we can engage in these rasas or these mellows, these tastes, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different forms of servitude towards him. So as we know, there's 5 different rasas or 5 different moods which are displayed in the transcendent realm. You can become like one of Krishna's parents. You can be in the mood of being Krishna's parent, or in the mood of being his friend, like the cowherd, the gopas are. You can be in the mood of being one of his cowherd girlfriends, or you can be in neutrality, like Shantaras. So there's different rasas which are elaborated further on in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So with that understanding that Lord Caitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who's manifested in this realm with his different energies and pastimes, we can, in that context, read about these pastimes of Advaita Acharya and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Go to the next image here. So Advaita Acharya. So we heard some of the preliminary description of the pastime that Prabhupada gave in his purport here. So this is an elaboration from the Chaitanya Bhagavat written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So this goes deeper into this pastime of Lord Chaitanya beating Advaita Acharya. In the company of Nityananda and Gadadhar, the Lord enjoyed pastimes in the houses of his devotees. All the devotees were filled with the Lord's ecstasy. They saw the entire world in relationship to Krishna. They were constantly absorbed in love of God and had no external consciousness. They had no engagement other than the performance of Sankirtan. Of all the devotees, Acharya Gosai, Advaita Acharya, was the most blissful. No one was able to understand his unfathomable characteristics. The glories of Lord Chaitanya's great devotee Advaita, the Lord of Shantapur, are known by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to only a few devotees. When Vishvambhara, Lord Chaitanya, regained external consciousness, he would offer respect to all the Vaishnavas and particularly to Advaita. There's a short purport here by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always displayed intense eagerness to please Krishna and acted like he did not even glance at the world of material enjoyment. The moment his glance fell on the external world, he immediately engaged in the service of Vishnu's devotees. He thus displayed the pastime of serving Sri Advaita Acharya with awe and reverence, but Advaita Prabhu was not pleased by this. His only purpose in life was to serve Sri Chaitanya. Therefore, he considered the Lord's exhibition of respect to him as a frustration of his own good fortune. As a result of this, the Lord of Shantapur, which is Advaita Acharya, was unhappy. His mind rumbled and his heart felt no relief. This thief constantly harasses me by giving up his superior position and grabbing hold of my feet. The Lord is most powerful, so by force I cannot check him from taking dust from my feet. So Advaita Acharya is explained that is Mahavishnu, a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. So in that role of Mahavishnu, he's, you could say, in a mood of servitorship to Krishna. Like he explains that Mahavishnu is lying down and is breathing out all these universes from his body, and he's doing this in a mood of service. So that's the rasa between them, whereas Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is treating him as his superior and worshipping his feet. So Advaita Acharya is getting very, very upset and disturbed by this. The Lord is most powerful, so by force I cannot check him from taking dust from my feet. The only alternative I have is the power of devotional service, for no one can recognize Vishvambhara without devotional service. When I smash his illusion into pieces, then only will my name Advaita Simha be glorified. This thief has become proud after defeating Bhrigu, but he does not know that I have hundreds of disciples like Bhrigu. And because Krishna is a person, he has a sense of humour. So there is humour in this pastime. So it's not that the transcendent realm is some sort of boring, dry, stale environment, but it's full of enjoyment and pleasure and rasa. The rasa, this is where the pleasure comes from these pastimes that are enjoyed between the Lord and his associates. So there's a purport there, but we don't have time to go through all the purports, so I'll keep reading through the text. I'll read a little bit of the purport because it just adds a bit of context to this pastime. Sri Gaurasundar, who is non-different from Vrajendra Nandana, could not hide the stealing propensities of Vishama Sundara pastimes from Advaita Prabhu. The forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord in those who are tortured by the illusory energy and who cannot understand their own constitutional position or the position of the Supreme Lord awakens in them a spirit of enjoyment at every step. But since Advaita Prabhu was a remarkably intelligent and most clever devotee of Gaura, his thoughts were not like those of a foolish living entity. He endeavoured with a desire to obtain punishment from Sri Chaitanya Dev to reverse the concept that he was worshipable. Thinking in this way, he desired to place artificial obstacles in the Gaura Avatar's preaching of devotional service to belittle the Lord's pastimes as a servant. We also have to keep in mind that it was Advaita Acharya who was petitioning the Lord to come, because at that time in Navadvip and throughout India, people had sort of missed the point of the Vedas and were just using the Vedas to do mundane pujas so they could get some sort of material benefit and material reward, and the bhakti text, which is the emphasis and goal of all the Vedas, had been covered over or forgotten. So in lamentation, Advaita Acharya had offered Ganga Jal, Ganga water, to a Shalagram Shila and Tulsi leaves, and had called out very earnestly for the Lord to appear, because he realized the situation isn't going to change until the Lord himself comes. So he was the one that petitioned and invited Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to appear, to rectify that situation. But now he's seemingly in this pastime is going to go against the Lord and start preaching Mayavad philosophy. So this is Sri Advaita Prabhu thinking, I'll make the Lord so angry that he'll punish me by his own hand. Although the Lord has incarnated to preach devotional service, I'll not show any respect to such devotional service. This is my resolution. If I do not accept devotional service, then the Lord will forget himself out of anger and punish me by pulling my hair. After contemplating in this way, Advaita Prabhu happily departed with Haridas Thakur. He came home on the pretext of some work and contemplated his resolution. Intoxicated with the ecstasy, he constantly swayed back and forth as he glorified jnana, knowledge, while commenting on the book named Yoga Vashishta. So we know that Rupa Goswami gives the understanding of what pure devotional service actually is free from jnana and karma, free from mental speculation and fruitive activities. How does the verse go? Yeah. Anyabhalashitashanyam jnana kanmadi anavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uchite. That devotional service has to be performed in a favourable way to Lord Krishna, in a favourable way, and free of this jnana and karma, or the desire for reaping the fruits of your activities. But we can see here that Advaita Acharya is now totally going against that principle, and he's going to start preaching this jnana philosophy as being superior to bhakti. After contemplating this way, Advaita Prabhu happily departed Haridas. Intoxicated with ecstasy, he constantly swayed back and forth as he glorified jnana while commenting on the book named Yoga Vashishta. There's a short purport by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. While explaining the non-devotional Mayavad book named Yoga Vashishta, Sri Advaita Prabhu made a show of aversion to the path of devotional service. His purpose was to obstruct Mahaprabhu's preaching of devotional service so that he, Gora, would punish him rather than worship him. This is also Prabhupada writes this in a purport to the Caitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela in relation to this. There is a book of the name Yoga Vashishta that Mayavadis greatly favour because it is full of impersonal misunderstandings regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead with no touch of Vaishnavism. Factually, all Vaishnavas should avoid such a book, but Advaita Acharya Prabhu, wanting punishment from the Lord, began to support the impersonal statements of the Yoga Vashishta. Thus Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became extremely angry at him and seemingly treated him disrespectfully. So we'll continue on from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. This is Advaita Acharya. Without jnana, what power does devotional service to Vishnu have? Therefore, jnana has all potency and is the life of all. One who does not understand such jnana is comparable to a person who leaves his wealth at home and then searches for it in the forest. This is the preaching of Advaita Acharya. Devotional service to Vishnu is like a mirror, while jnana is like the eyes. What is the use of a mirror if one has no eyes? I have studied all the scriptures from beginning to end and come to the conclusion that jnana is the essence of everything. Haridas Thakur knew well the characteristics of Advaita. Therefore, on hearing this explanation, he began to laugh out very loudly. Such are the unfathomable characteristics of Advaita Prabhu. They are auspicious for the devotees and impediments to the miscreants. Purport. Those who were fortunate understood the characteristics of the devotee Advaita and thus realized the supremacy of devotional service to the Lord. Those who were unfortunate and sinful could not understand the purpose of Advaita Prabhu and attained inauspiciousness by accepting impersonal jnana as superior to devotional service. They obtained only impediments on the path of their progress. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat continues. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like a desire tree that fulfills everyone's desires. Therefore, he understood Advaita's resolution. Purport. Mahaprabhu is the original source of fulfillment of everyone's desires. Therefore, he could certainly understand the internal mood of Advaita Acharya. When Advaita Acharya saw the Lord offer him great respect, despite his endeavour to serve Mahaprabhu with his body, mind and speech, then to to counteract the situation, he made a show of establishing bhakti as less enlightening by giving more importance to jnana. So sometimes that's what people say, and even Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in the association of some renounced Mayavadi sannyasis, they thought that he was just a sentimentalist. They see it that way, that these devotees are less intelligent, that are sentimentalists, and they sentimentally chant the names of Krishna, whereas a real sannyasi will study the Vedas and to philosophical understanding will attain a superior position. So that's why it's quite humorous, this pastime where Advaita Prabhu was seemingly putting this process of jnana varga, this process or pathway of attaining knowledge, as superior to bhakti. But Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he understood the mood of Advaita Acharya. And also it says here that the devotees like Haridas Thakur, when they were hearing Advaita Acharya preaching this way, they saw it quite in humour. They began laughing at it. They didn't take it too seriously. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat, at this point, Lord Chaitanya goes into another leela with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu where they meet a sannyasi who's not really a sannyasi. He has an illicit connection with females and he's drinking alcohol, and he invites Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into his house. And there's a whole pastime that takes place, which was also described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had mercifully gone to the sannyasi's house and preached to him, himself and Lord Nityananda Prabhu had jumped into the Ganga and were floating down the Ganga. So this is where this pastime takes up again. Lord Chaitanya, speaking to Lord Nityananda floating in the Ganga, he says, Advaita Acharya disturbed my sleep and brought me here, and now he's covering the glories of devotional service by preaching jnana. As Mahaprabhu threatened and roared while floating in the current of the Ganga, Nityananda remained silent and smiled to himself. By the influence of his devotional service, Advaita Acharya was most powerful. He understood that his desire to be punished by the Lord would soon be fulfilled. Advaita Prabhu realized that the Lord was coming in an angry mood, and he began to explain jnana even more enthusiastically. Who can understand the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya's devotees? In this way, the two lords floated down the Ganga to Advaita's house. Accompanied by Nityananda, the angry Vishrambhara saw Advaita rocking back and forth in the happiness of preaching jnana. Purport. Sri Advaita Prabhu desired to achieve abundant mercy in the form of chastisement from Sri Gaurasundara. So he rocked back and forth out of respect for Mayavad, which is adverse to devotional service. Therefore, on arriving there with Nityananda Mahaprabhu, displayed anger towards those envious of devotional service. In an angry mood, the Lord said, O Nada, tell me, which is superior, Gyan or Bhakti? Advaita replied, Jnana is always superior. What is the use of devotional service for one who does not have Gyan? On hearing Advaita say that Gyan was superior, the son of Sachi lost his external consciousness out of anger. He dragged Advaita from his seat in the courtyard and began beating him with his own hands. Purport. Since Advaita said that Gyan was more glorious than Bhakti, Mahaprabhu dragged him into the courtyard and began to profusely beat him in order to teach people. Although she knew everything, Advaita's chaste wife and the mother of the universe tried to restrain the Lord. Spare his life, he's an old Brahmana. For whose benefit do you chastise him? This Brahmana is so old. What more will you do to him? If something happens to him, you'll be responsible for the consequences. On hearing these words befitting a chaste wife, Nityananda smiled. Haridas Thakur remembered Krishna in fear. In his anger, the Lord did not hear those words befitting a chaste wife. He roared and threatened Advaita with proud words. I was sleeping in the ocean of milk when you, Nada, woke me to fulfill your mission. You brought me here to reveal the science of devotional service, but now you're covering devotional service with your explanations of jnana. Purport. Sri Advaita Prabhu revealed the glories of devotional service by inducing Sriman Mahaprabhu to appear in this material world. But since at this point he was misguiding people with his explanations on jnana that cover the propensity of service to the Supreme Lord, his original purpose was being frustrated. This was revealed by Mahaprabhu. If your intention was to cover devotional service, then why did you have me incarnate? I never frustrate your resolve, but you always deceive me. After releasing Advaita, the Lord sat down at the doorway and began to loudly reveal his own glories. Purport. After he stopped beating Advaita Prabhu, the Lord sat down at the doorway and began to loudly reveal the topics of his wonderful pastimes. O Nada, it was I who killed Kamsa. You know everything, don't you? Varanasi was completely burnt by my chakra, and the mighty Ravana was killed by my arrow. It was I who held up Govardhana hill with my left hand, and it was I who brought the Parijata flower from heaven. I deceived Bali and then bestowed mercy on him. It was I who killed Hiranyakashipu to save Prahlad. In this way, the Lord revealed his opulences, and Vaida floated in an ocean of ecstatic love while listening. Advaita was filled with ecstasy after receiving his punishment. He clapped his hands and danced in humility. I have received proper punishment for my offence, O Lord. You are very kind, have actually given me only a token punishment. Now I have realized your supremacy. You have suitably punished me for my fault. Now the relationship between the Lord and his servant has been strengthened. After speaking in this way, the Lord of Shantapur danced in ecstasy. Advaita danced in ecstasy throughout the courtyard. He frowned and spoke to the Lord as follows. Where has your glorification of me gone now? Where has all your deceitful behaviour gone now? I am not Devasa Muni, who you insulted by smearing his remnants all over your body. Purport. I am your eternal servant. I am not an oppressor of the Lord and the devotees, as is Devasa. If I had actually become envious of the devotional service of Hari like Devasa, then you could have condemned me. But I am your devotee. It is mentioned in the Puranas that the Lord smeared the remnants of Devasa's rice all over his body. So the Caitanya Bhagavat continues. I am not Brigu, whose foot dust you happily accepted on your chest as Srivats. My name is Advaita, and I am your unalloyed servant. My only wish is to honour your remnants birth after birth. By the influence of your remnants, I am unaffected by your illusory energy. You have punished me, now give me the shelter of your lotus feet. After saying this, the Lord of Shantapur devoutly fell down and placed his head at the Lord's feet. Lord Caitanya respectfully picked Advaita up and cried profusely as he embraced him. On seeing Advaita's devotion, Nityananda Prabhu cried so profusely that it appeared as if a river was flowing from his eyes. Haridas Thakur fell to the ground and cried. The wife of Advaita and all their servants began to cry. Achyutananda, the son of Advaita, also cried. Advaita's entire house became filled with ecstatic love of Krishna. Lord Caitanya felt embarrassed for having beaten Advaita, so he happily awarded Advaita a benediction. I will bestow mercy on any living entity, even an ant, insect, animal, or bird, who takes shelter of you even for a moment, even if that living entity commits hundreds of offences against me. On hearing the benediction, Advaita Prabhu began to cry. He caught hold of the Lord's feet and humbly spoke as follows. O Lord, whatever you spoke can never be proven false, but please listen to my declaration. If one worships me but does not accept you, then may his devotion to me annihilate him. One who does not worship your lotus feet and accept you as the Supreme Lord is not dear to me. Anyone who worships you is my life and soul. I cannot tolerate a person who disregards you. I cannot look at the face of a Vaishnav aparadi, even if he happens to be my son or servant. Purport. When three of Advaita's sons and a few of his so-called disciples became offensive towards Sri Caitanya Dev and his pure devotees, Advaita Prabhu severed all ties and affection with them. This is understood from Advaita's statement. From the time of his presence up to today, his forsaken sons and disciples of his descendants have no connection whatsoever with Sri Advaita or Sri Caitanya Dev. They glorify their non-devotional credentials even today. The Caitanya Bhagavat continues. If one transgresses you and worships millions of demigods, those demigods will kill him on some pretext. These are not simply my words, they are the words of the Vedas. The killing of Sudakshina is evidence of this. And then Advaita Acharya's glorification of the Lord continues right up to for another 30 or so verses after that. But we won't read those because we're running out of time. So when Sri Caitanya, when When Sri Sachinandan heard Advaita's explanation of the absolute truth, he roared loudly and spoke, "Everyone listen to my words. Any fallen soul who disrespects my servant and worships me, cuts me into pieces. His worship feels like fire to my body." Purport. Approving Advaita's statement and establishing himself as the object of worship, Gaurasundara said, "There is an inseparable relationship between the servant and the object of service. Therefore, it is stated in the scriptures, Achayitva tu govindam tadiyan nachayatu yana sa bhagavato yena kevalam dambika smrita. One who worships Lord Govinda but fails to worship his devotees should be understood to not be a devotee of the Lord but simply a victim of false pride. Considering the absolute truth as a product of matter amounts to cutting the body of the Supreme Lord to pieces. In the name of such religions based on envy, various religious systems are created that distract people from the actual truth. I am Purushottam and I am the object of service. If I am disconnected from my devotees, if I am deprived of variegated pastimes, if I am placed in the prison of impersonalism, and if my limbs are separated from myself, the mockery of perfection and religiosity and useless flowery preaching found in this world by such worship and cultivation of religious principles are simply attempts at setting fire to my Purushottam body and burning me. The envy and violence of people devoid of devotional service to Vishnu are simply attempts at creating duality by attributing the absolute truth Vishnu with mundane abomination. Otherwise, disregarding the eternal variegated pastimes of the Lord by considering them comparable to material enjoyment simply denies complete enjoyment. Persons who are conversant with the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Abheda do not hesitate to point out the disparity in the 12 types of temporary mallows called rasas that are found in mundane relationships. Spiritual realization devoid of material conceptions amounts to inclination for service of Vishnu. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati makes it quite clear that the impersonalists are very, very offensive to the Lord. And even Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu says it's like they're cutting my body to pieces and setting it on fire by denying me a personal form. So we can see that this Mayavad philosophy is actually very, very offensive to the Lord. He makes it very, very clear it's very offensive towards him. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat continues, "My wish-fulfilling holy names destroy one who blasphemes my servant. All living entities in the innumerable universes are my servants, so anyone who blasphemes any living entity is ruined." That's interesting, isn't it? All living entities in the innumerable universes are my servants, so anyone who blasphemes any living entity is ruined. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explains, because of aversion to Hari, materialistic people accept the service of the 6 enemies headed by lust and anger as their only shelter. All living entities of the visible and invisible worlds are established as servants of the Supreme Lord. If a person exhibits envy of another person, then that envious person confirms that he is malicious of those who are inclined to the Lord's service, rather than confirming himself as a Vaishnava. Whatever envy is exhibited in such considerations is more or less envy of the Supreme Lord. Moreover, since the devotee's propensity for performing service or welfare activities is so strong, those who are envious consider that the endeavours of such servants of Sri Caitanya to increase ignorant people's inclination towards Krishna are similar to their own variegated pastimes of envy. This guarantees their inauspiciousness. People become envious of objects that are not related to the absolute truth because of their propensity for enjoyment. Pure devotees are never driven by the 3 modes of nature to merge into the waters of goodness, passion and ignorance. Therefore, without taking shelter of non-envious devotees, the envious materialistic enjoyers of the temporary material world fall into inconvenience as a result of their karma by accepting philosophies like Mayavad, and thus bring about their own ruination. One can never realize oneself by unconstitutional propensities. Aspiring mankind has no alternative to realization of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, those who are inimical to the Supreme Master accept enmity of the spiritual master, pride, and other worthless objects as wealth. They merge into the darkness of ignorance and they give importance to impersonalism, Kevala Dvaita Vada, which denies Svajatiya Vijatiya Bheda, the distinctions among both similar and dissimilar objects. This is their downfall. Unalloyed service to the Satchidananda Supreme Lord is the opportunity to become self-realized. Otherwise, one certainly falls down. Heavy statements by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. Lord Caitanya continues, you are more important than my own body, so if anyone transgresses you, he will be unable to tolerate his fate. Even if a sannyasi blasphemes an innocent person, he goes to hell, and all his religious principles are destroyed. Raising his arms, Lord Gauranga declared to the world, avoid offences and chant the names of Krishna. That's a wonderful instruction. Avoid offences and chant the names of Krishna. Only Lord Balaram has the power to understand the pastimes that took place between Nityananda, Advaita and their associates. In his form as Ananta, he sings their glories with his 1,000 mouths. Lord Caitanya then glanced at Advaita and smiled as he spoke to him. Have I been mischievous like a child? Advaita replied, not particularly. The Lord said, listen, Nityananda Mahasya, if I have been restless, please forgive me. Then Nityananda, Caitanya, Advaita and Haridas looked at one another and began to laugh. So that concludes that ecstatic pastime with Advaita Acharya being beaten by the Lord. So there's obviously lots of lessons and teachings intertwined amongst all these particular pastimes. And just in conclusion, there's a nice way we can look at these pastimes, how they have relevance to us as aspiring Vaishnavas. That in the Adi Leela, there's another pastime where an associate of Advaita Acharya named Kamalakanta Vishvasya had made a mild offence in the view of Lord Caitanya. He'd approached Maharaj Patraparudra, the king of Orissa, and had written a letter explaining that actually Advaita Acharya is an incarnation of God. However, he has some monetary debts. He has some money owing. And Lord Caitanya didn't really appreciate that mood, saying that you've established Advaita Acharya as like a poor incarnation. So he said he didn't want to see Kamalakanta in his presence ever again. So Srila Prabhupada explains that when Kamalakanta Vishvasa had heard about this punishment by Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu of not being able to be in his presence again, he was very unhappy. But when Advaita Prabhu heard about it, he was greatly pleased. Seeing Kamalakanta Vishvasa unhappy, Advaita Prabhu told him, "You're greatly fortunate to have been punished by the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu." And Prabhupada says in his purport, this is an authoritative judgment by Sri Advaita Prabhu. He clearly advises that one should not be unhappy when reverses come upon him by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee should always be happy to receive the fortune awarded him by the Supreme Lord, which seems pleasant or unpleasant according to one's judgment. So this is Advaita Acharya speaking. Formerly, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu always respected me as a senior, but I did not like such respect. Therefore, my mind became afflicted by unhappiness, and I made a plan. So that's what we've been reading about today, the plan of Advaita Acharya. So anyway, we can stop there. I don't know if anybody has any points or questions or anything to add to what we've been discussing. Yeah. Yeah, I'll read it again. A devotee should always be happy to receive the fortune awarded him by the Supreme Lord, which seems pleasant or unpleasant according to one's judgment. Yeah. It's a nice meditation as we sojourn through this world, isn't it? That whether things happen the way we want them to or not happen to, it is the Lord's mercy one way or another. And it's true, isn't it, that hindsight's easier than foresight, that sometimes we find ourselves in difficult circumstances and situations and are thinking, why am I here for? Why are you doing this to me, Krishna? But we can maybe look back in hindsight and realise, I can see why that was like that for. Yeah, so it's always good to see that whatever is going on in our lives is somehow or other is the mercy of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu in that context. Yes, nice reflection. Any other points or questions at all? It's a pretty ecstatic pastime, wasn't it? I like the Caitanya Bhagavat because it really goes quite deeply into these pastimes, because you read about these pastimes briefly in the Caitanya Charitamrita that the Advaitacharya is beaten by the Lord, but you can really magnify the whole pastime and extract a lot of nectar out of it. So it's a great book to read, actually, the Caitanya Bhagavat. Well worth taking the time to read. No, shall we stop there? Take prasadam. Jai. Sri Caitanya Bhagavat ki jai. Sri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Sri Prabhupada ki jai. We read some nice purports from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati as well. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati ko ki jai.